This is the Open University.
I just went downstairs to the cellar, to get some wood for my fire, which is notionally alight just now. I think it's going to burst into flames, I hope, shortly. I'm not very good at starting it, but once it starts and gets hot, you can keep adding logs. And then I found out that 6 logs lasts a whole evening, essentially from about 6 p.m. to midnight. And then I can open it up when the embers are just glowing. I open up and I have my tatami here, and this deep heat radiates out from the log fire. I had early problems with the neighbor upstairs because I was burning this fire when it was about 15 degrees centigrade outside. It was cold inside the flat, but it was not cold enough outside for the smoke to be drawn up the chimney properly. So he has some cracks in his chimney at his level up there, and he was running down, fairly furious, I must say. He's not a great negotiator. I wouldn't want him to work for the United Nations or anything. But it's actually been fine when it's cold weather. And whenever I go down, I went down dressed like this with a bag slung over my shoulder to fetch logs, because there's a whole cellar stocked with logs downstairs. And this Turkish guy was coming out of the apartment building in the back of the courtyard, and he must have thought I looked very strange, very anomalous cultural transplant, wearing Japanese labourers' trousers and shoes. My sweater from Guérisol in Paris, from the Marché d'Aligre. I was there with my fiancée, and with this kata-ate, my Japanese shoulder pad top, which actually keeps the top part of your body very warm. And yeah, I probably looked like I shouldn't have been there. And in a sense, I'm kind of not here in Germany. This is really the theme I want to talk about today. First of all, Germany, whether I'm really here in Germany, what it means to be in a place, whether you need to be in a city, for instance. Now we have Wi-Fi and all these sort of delocalizing technologies. So, but I wanted to say, I went down to the cellar, and there's a lot of chopped wood in there, and it always slightly frightens me because it makes a crackling noise. Whenever I turn on the lights, I've actually crept up, I creep in there, and I get to the wooden slats of the particular allotment, the cellar allotment that I have, and it's full of coal for the ceramic coal fire in the next room, and wood for this fire, which is still smoking. It is still alive. There's no flame in it. There is some kind of little bugs in the wood, because as soon as they know that I'm coming to them, they start crackling. In other words, getting the hell out of the logs at the front. I'm assuming they have that kind of intelligence. I don't know. Maybe that assumes that they have the intelligence of crows, when in fact they're these tiny mites. I don't know if it is that or some kind of atmospheric effect from having opened the door. But it's not crackling until I get to the door, and then it starts crackling, and I can hear it through the slats. There's a kind of primordial fear of cellars. I often have nightmares in which I'm going down to a cellar, and there's something just inherently terrifying. The deeper you get, these sort of cellars stocked with disused objects, old things you've stored. Perhaps it's a dream in which I'm moving house, and I suddenly find there's a whole extra room of junk in a cellar, which I haven't actually remembered to pack yet, and there isn't time to pack it. That kind of nightmare. But also the nightmare of everything that's neglected. All these Stephen King horror films in which there's a house built in an old Indian burial ground or whatever it is. This runs very deep. But also I associate chopped wood with woodcutters, and I associate woodcutters with burglars for some reason, because we had a cottage when I was a very young child in Ochterarder, where we actually lived initially. This is a town in town in Perthshire. hope that's not smoke getting to me. There's a town in Perthshire near Gleneagles Hotel. Not a rich town. Gleneagles is obviously a rich resort, but it's not a rich town. And we had a farm. We rented a farm called West Kirkton at Auchterarder. And thereafter, when we moved to Edinburgh, my dad got a job teaching at Heriot's school. We moved to Edinburgh, but we kept a cottage on that same estate, just near a pine forest, near a beautiful lake with a little landing stage that jutted out into it. And so I have these very early country memories. And I remember our cottage got burgled. And this must have been one of the first words I kind of learned. Apparently the very first word I learned was Lumumba, because he was an African dictator and actually a left-wing president of an African republic who got deposed by the CIA, I think. So it's kind of weird, the first word. And I think the second word I learned was car, and the third word I learned was cow. All this has to go into my book. Wow, I need to really write this in. And but the word burglar had a weird terror for me, because I imagined woodcutters and burglars being, the main inhabitants of these rural regions. I just watched a documentary the other day about Tony Martin, who was the guy who surprised burglars in his remote country farm and shot them, killed one of them, wounded the other, and the third drove away. And he was then in prison for life, and then there was a huge tabloid controversy about whether you had the right to confront burglars in your own house and shoot them with a actually he had a repeater rifle, a very deadly lethal weapon, which he claims he just found in his car. He didn't have a license for, so he was a pretty dodgy character. He had his sentence reduced to manslaughter. But anyway, yes, burglars is a sort of terrifying word, because I didn't quite know what they were. I just knew that there was a horror in my parents' voice when they described our cottage having been broken into by burglars. I don't think they would have got away with much. I mean, all we had in there was a few mugs and knives and forks and tables and chairs and things. It was used on weekends just to keep in touch with the countryside. My dad was a keen countryman who fished and shot and stuff. So I guess I associate that period of my life in Perthshire with wood pigeons, burglars, and woodcutters. Yeah, all things to do with wood. So when I handle wood here in Berlin, first of all, it's so anomalous, really, in this sort of silicon world which I inhabit, touching electronic gadgets, essentially. I've got my projector set up here. I'm projecting onto the ceiling. I don't know if you can see that. I've got Facebook on the ceiling there. It's probably the best place for it. And so I'm very used to, I've got Bluetooth everywhere, and everything can be operated, and smart lights and things. I'm getting a little bit into the IKEA tread-free system, which is a way to turn on the light without actually having to get up and turn on the light. You've got a remote button, and you've got a hub and everything for your intelligent home. So I'm sort of advancing into that Internet of Things, but there will be no, RFID chips in logs. Well, there might be one day, who knows. Can sort of make the logs bring themselves up from the cellar themselves and sort of strip themselves of the bugs on the way. But wood it's tangible, isn't it? It's part of this old world. And so it does hark back in my mind to memories of my very early years. And I guess it also has a Germanic resonance, because for some reason I think of woodcutters and I think of Grimm, the Brothers Grimm, and all those Germanic fairy tales about, the donkey and the dog and the cat walking through the forest and then surprising burglars in a house in the middle of the forest and turning themselves into a monster to frighten the burglars away. Burglars are frightening, but also can be frightened. So it ties in with this whole notion of Germanness. Here I am going to a Keller, which is spelled with a K in Germany, of course, down to the Keller, dressed like a Japanese worker, picking up the logs, bringing the logs in, and somehow I think of myself doing this as a quotable gesture. It's almost like it's so retro that it's amusing. It's not really like a chore. I don't think I do any chores. I'm a post-chore person. What I do is I sort of enact. I feel like an actor. It's cold and it rains and I feel like an actor. And I think of my early days and want to get back there. So I think of Grimm fairy tales. I'm just so, I mean, it's kind of like the book I'm writing. It's so densely elusive, and it's like I'm quoting other literature the whole time. I'm making literature. I think it is kind of literature, but I'm doing it almost entirely by quoting. So I think of Kathy Acker. I was having a conversation with my friend Emma Balkind online the other day about Kathy Acker, and she was tremendously important the way she, in this postmodern way, which she was a pioneer of, she was appropriating texts from people like George Eliot and and lots of people, just taking or Dickens, taking wholesale these chunks of text. Yeah, Dickens, Great Expectations, not George Eliot. Just chopping things in like you would chop wood, I have a little handsaw which a friend gave me, which is actually not very up to chopping these little logs. I had some friends from Finland who came to visit Osaka, and the first thing they did, they made a beeline for the tools area of town, which was just behind Den town, the Denki town. The electric and electronic town is the main road there, but just behind, in the blocks behind, you have shops dedicated to that old-fashioned thing, which is making, chopping things up, and actually getting your hands dirty with physical things. You literally do. I literally am getting my hands dirty with this fire, which is still showing signs of life. It's not yet dead. I need to buy a new fire lighter thing. But it's kind of they've they've made a sauna in Helsinki, these friends, and he's Finnish and she's Japanese, and she kind of runs the sauna, and they have their architecture office in there as well. He's an architect, Thomas, he's called, and they, in a way, they've made this sauna to do the same thing as I'm doing with the log. They are literally burning logs to make the sauna hot. But in a way, there's this similar return to the physical and the tangible, to getting your hands dirty, to manual labor. Maybe my friend Jan, who's moved to the countryside, is experiencing the same kind of thing, that we spent the last decade entirely in this world of bits. And now we're returning with some kind of sense of nostalgia, and also a kind of almost a postmodern feeling of the artifice of atoms, that we're actors in the world of atoms. We don't quite belong there, just like I don't quite belong when I'm dressed up as a Japanese, dressed up ironically as a Japanese worker. Well, the bottom half of me is a worker, the top half of me is like an old lady, because old ladies tend to wear these things. But it's almost like a quotable gesture, as Brecht used to say, that we've learned from real old ladies or real carpenters or whatever it is we're taking off. And I don't know, it's probably some kind of terrible sickness that we have, that we can't really genuinely enact physical labor. I certainly can't. I don't come from a physical laboring family, although we had early coal fires in my house. Before, I think, British cities went smokeless. Edinburgh used to be called Old Reekie because it was, Reekie means smelly in Scottish. It was the old smelly city because of all the smoke. And the buildings were all black. It was sooty, it was an industrial context. It's not just me that's gone sort of fancy pants and postmodern. It's the whole idea of an industrial context in Britain where something like 80% of people were manual labourers, were working class. When I was born in 1960, there were still huge percentages of the population who worked with their hands, who were going down the mines, who were making steel, making ships on the Clyde, We were doing what China is now doing. The manual labour has all left the West. Has all left Britain, certainly, and gone to other countries. So we no longer build cars, we no longer do these physical things. We have service industries, we have branding, we have PR, we have this kind of culture. It's not just the internet, but it's also the culture of a kind of literary culture in a weird way, because PR is about words and adjectives, like the current, the Brexit deal. Theresa May, imagine if you forbade her by some wonderful imperial decree to use adjectives, strong and stable and confident, and she loves using these positively spun, charged adjectives. And really what she's offering has no substance at all, but the adjectives make it sound, like all these great things, strong, stable, and that everything's getting better all the time. So, we kind of, we inhabit, especially in Britain, we no longer have any real skills except spin skills, PR skills, and I'm part of that. I'm part of that in the sense that What am I doing? I'm currently writing a memoir which spins my own life. I'm trying to spin it with honesty, and I'm definitely writing about the bad things. In fact, I've even discovered, it's a bit like doing therapy, I've discovered some things which I feel much worse about than I realized I did. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. And I don't know if it'll sell books or not. I doubt it'll. I don't know. It's certainly not going to be a Michelle Obama type page turner or shelf flyer offer. But I think it's just a matter of intellectual honesty that I do that. So yes, German is, I don't really, I'm not going out very much. It's not really the weather to go out. There hasn't been sunshine for over a week here. I was in Düsseldorf and it was very sunny last weekend, the weekend before last, with my fiancée. I'm sure I can do a whole video about my fiancée at some point, but this is not the moment. But I'm incredibly happy in my private life. And I was in Düsseldorf seeing her, and she's French, actually. She's not Japanese, which is quite an interesting development for me. So I've really, although I'm sort of still dressing Japanese, I'm rediscovering my Europeanness, just at a moment when it looks as if the European citizenship that I enjoy now, that I have stamped on my red passport, will be taken away by some dreadful Brexit. I'm still hoping Brexit does not happen. So yes, I'm not really interacting with Germany per se. I was frustrated on Sunday though, because they have a market every second Sunday just down on the Maybach-Ufer Canal, which is not far from here, and it's called Neukölln Flow Market. Neukölln is where we live, and Neu is the German for now, or new rather. And it's but it's kind of a gentrifying market. I think of it as, because it's all people like me. It's kind of very cosmopolitan, and it's people who are media professionals, and a lot of Americans, a lot of Japanese. Last time I was there, I met all the Japanese people who go to Gerswalde and who operate the restaurant out at Gerswalde, and who all live in this neighborhood very close to me. Ayumi just lives around the corner. Sayuri lives nearby as well. But they were all there, and what people do, there was one of their friends was actually going back, the girl who's been doing the gardening actually at Gerswalde is going back to Japan, so she was selling all her stuff, which was exactly what I did at that same market in 2010. I had a stall, me and Hisai had a stall where we sold our stuff before going back to Japan. And it was cancelled on Sunday because there is this holiday called Totensonntag, Dead Sunday, literally, or the Sunday of the Dead, I guess, which is a commemorative evangelical Christian holiday which was instituted in the 19th century, influenced, according to German Wikipedia, by the Romantic fashion for commemorating the dead, or for thinking about dead people, as witnessed by young Werther, Goethe's young Werther, who commits suicide and, after an unhappy love affair, shoots himself through the heart wearing a blue waistcoat. And there was literally a fashion, there was a trend after that came out for kids to go out and buy blue waistcoats and also to commit suicide. A lot of people died because of that book, because of this Totentanz, the dance of death, which the book encouraged. Romanticism in Germany was in love with death, and even you could say Hitler is kind of an offspring. Hitler is seen by some historians and analysts as the final flowering, if you want to call it that, of the Romantic movement, the German Romantic movement. So I was joking on Facebook, I was complaining about this, saying, why do Sundays in Germany have to be so dead? Why do they have to close all the shops? I really miss Ikebukuro in Tokyo on a Sunday when all the shops are open and people are out and looking so happy, and sometimes they close off the roads to traffic and there are stalls, and it's just this great sense of fourmillant, ant-like vitality which springs up. And I was really lamenting that, because I always, on Saturday, you always think, oh shit, I'm going to have to buy some bread and some milk, because these things will not be available on Sunday. Even the flea markets, which are the one consolation you have in Berlin on a Sunday, people selling their second-hand stuff, are possibly going to fall victim to these weird evangelical holidays. So I was complaining about that, and that's something I'll never get used to. I had the same complaint last year. You might have seen the Open University thing where I came here from Japan, really looking forward to going to my favorite secondhand bookstore, Pequod Books, in the Schillerkiez, to buy my usual bandaged but fantastically charismatic texts. This is Blaise Cendral's Poète du Cosmos. Only to find that it wasn't going to be open for 4 days because it was Easter, and I just hadn't even thought about Easter. I'm so post-Christian. Perhaps there'll be a way to rediscover Christianity, you know, in the same way they have rediscovered. Wow, amazing! The fire has actually come to life. Can you see the flames? I've rediscovered tangible, physical things like wood. Obviously, this is all wood and paper. I mean, I've already disinvested all the plastic from these cabinets. There were a lot of CD. I mean, there's nothing more ugly to me now than a CD case, a jewel case made of plastic. I've got all those sort of stacked up there. But what I brought here, because books and paper and wood suddenly became cool to me. They became the new kind of thing that excited me. So I've sort of restocked these boxes all with paper. These are my proud showcase of tatty old paper. Some of these are my oldest books, like this Diaries of Franz Kafka I had when I was a student, you know, or there are books going back to my childhood here. And these turn out to be super important to me. But also just physical things like bits of wood. Instead of, I do have an electric heater going at the same time, partly because the halogen bars actually provide a light. It's a kind of ersatz light for this video. But it's I found there's a real magic in fires. You know, last night I've taken to projecting on the ceiling. So I was projecting an Audrey Hepburn thriller movie from 1963, set in Paris, onto the ceiling. And then with the fire here and the Bluetooth speakers here for the sound from the film, and with my Muji my Muji beanbag here, just gazing up at that and being very happy, drinking a little Schwarzweißbier. And that's a very nice cozy winter scenario, to be watching a fire, you know, feeding a fire with logs and watching it turn to embers. So in that sense, I'm happily Germanic. I'm not sure how long I'm going to stay in Germany. I have to say now with this this delirious happiness I have to be engaged to a wonderful person. She lives in Paris, so I'm thinking of moving to Paris next year. Watch this space.
Open University.